Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you're well and keeping safe. Continuing on where I'd left off yesterday. I'm actually trying different locations. Would love to have your feedback, different backdrops, and what may work sound-wise, visually-wise. This is probably going to be echoey because it's in the hall of our home, but I just want to try with a white background and see how that looks. I'm not expecting the sound to be great, but if you have a little bit of time just to let me know what the video quality and the sound seem like coming from the other end. So picking up where I left off yesterday, talking about my journey with the cruise lines and how that began. One thing I'd love to touch on, I quoted something yesterday from Stuart. I misquoted it a little bit, so I went back through it, and it was in regards to setting goals, and it was one of his videos. It was actually at a workshop he was giving, so it was a live video that had been recorded, and what he was covering at the time was called, I actually have the easel there just to refer to it, it was called Blissipline, which is blissful discipline. And in creating that, one of the things he touched on was in setting goals and the understanding that those goals could instill fear, but to lean into that. And the quote that Stuart used was, "A good goal should scare you a little and excite you a lot." And when I heard that, I'm like, wow, because I could relate to it. So many times through my life I felt that, including now with this latest journey I'm on. So I'm absolutely keeping that one with me, because it just speaks volumes. So getting back to where I left off yesterday, I flew into Miami, 1994, August. Scared a lot, but the excitement at least matched that, not knowing what I was getting into. And at that time, things were very different. There's a lot more protocols and systems in place in regards to the well-being, I would say, of staff that work on ships. Back then, there were no hours recorded. There was no human resources department. It was a bit of a chaotic situation in some ways in regards to your quality of life. But that didn't perturb me. So I started on a 3-4-day cruise out of Miami, and at that time, there was a very high turnover rate. The thing then was, if you get through your first month, you're going to be okay. They had a very high turnover of people leaving within the first month because it was just such an adjustment. They were away from family, away from friends. They were in this really hectic work environment, and it was just overwhelming. And learning so many new things. It was just crazy, to be honest. But I managed to get through that, persevered with it. But it was kind of talk about a baptism of fire, because from the moment you step on the ship, you're working. It's not like you have 2 days or a week to acclimatize and do an orientation. It doesn't work like that, because with the accommodations on the ship, in order for you to have a room, somebody else has to leave. And that's typically what happens, is there's constantly people leaving for vacations, and then other people are coming to replace them. It could be a returning crew member, or it could be a new hire, which in my case it was a new hire. So because of that, literally 3 hours after stepping onto the ship, I was in my work environment. I was looking after guests that very evening. So it was absolutely terrifying. But in looking back on it, that was the way to go, because you didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. You really didn't. You just had to get on with it. It was a blur in many ways, because you were so many trainings, so many safety briefings that you had to go to. So absolutely, that first month was chaotic. Typically a working week was 70 to 80 hours a week. That's just how it was, the demands of the job. So this was like nothing I had experienced before, but I went there for very specific reasons, so I certainly wasn't afraid of hard work. Thankfully, my recruiter gave it to me straight of how it was going to be, so I was aware that this was what I was stepping into, but being aware and then facing the reality are two very different things. Typically on a first contract, depending on your position, a contract will be 6 months in length, and then you would have 6 weeks off. So 6 months on, call it 6 months on, 6 weeks off. And it's like a marathon. You're working 7 days a week, clocking up 70 to 80 hours a week. You get maybe 1, maybe 2 lunches off. I mean, you didn't get a day off. Weekend, forget about it. It just didn't work like that. So you had very limited amount of time off. But as I got into it and got through that first month and got a lot of the trainings out of the way, that's when you get a little bit of breathing space, started to really make some great friends on the ship. And that's when it really started happening, that lifestyle of traveling started kicking in, that you start exploring the different ports of call, the different islands, and it was amazing. For me, added to that was the passion that I very quickly developed for being with guests, to really making it a special cruise for the guests. And I found myself very drawn to that. I tend to be a people person, pretty outgoing. And I was just very comfortable in that environment. Although I was making mistakes all over the grip and I was learning, I was just having a lot of fun with that and could really feel drawn to that experience of putting a smile on somebody's face when they came just to have dinner. And we, with the systems we had, we made it a lot more than just coming for dinner. So that was my experience. 3 months in, I really settled in and just started having such a great time. I realized really quickly, I'd mentioned yesterday that I kept my job in Ireland open for a year. I was given a year's leave of absence. I flew into Miami with that mindset. I felt I'm going to get this travel bug out of my system. I'm going to give it the year, enjoy it for what it is, and then go back to Ireland and hopefully pick up my life where I left off, but having gotten rid of this travel bug. I realized probably about month 3 into my first contract, that's not going to happen. I was hooked, literally I was hooked. I knew it was for me, and I knew that I wasn't going to go back to my old life at the end of that contract or at the end of a year. I could just see that so clear. So I'm going to continue that part of my journey in future videos. That's the introduction to working on my experience of working on cruise ships. In a nutshell, there were huge advantages and there were huge disadvantages. I'll get more into that. But as I quickly learned, once the advantages consistently outweighed the disadvantages, that was good enough for me, and that's how I approached it. So look forward to continue to share that part of my life with you. It's incredible for me, and I feel privileged to be in this environment now through SFM, where I'm looking back on that time. I'm really taking time to think about it and appreciate it, and a little bit of take a trip down memory lane. So thanks for joining me. Look forward to seeing you in the next video, and please have a grateful and wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.